can you step out of the car too? Can you please step out of the vehicle? Ma'am, can you please exit the vehicle for me? I'm asking you to step out of the vehicle for me. Can you please exit the vehicle?
Step out of the car, please, sir.
What is that?
I need you to step out of the car, sir.
I'm asking you very nicely, ma'am.
Traffic stops are important for protecting you and your family.
Traffic stops are important for protecting you and your family from drivers who suck. According to Pennsylvania versus Mims, which is case law, the Supreme Court says that you do have to step out of your car if an officer asks you to.
Yes, it's true that Pennsylvania versus Mims is Supreme Court case law. But people like Donut Operator here say that Pennsylvania versus Mims is not used by police officers to impede on your right to travel. It's not used to impede on your freedoms as an American.
The government's not impeding on your rights to travel. The government's not impeding on your rights at all for pulling you over for traffic violations.
For my safety and your safety. I'm asking you to step out of the vehicle for my safety.
You're a United States citizen. Therefore, you have to follow the laws of the United States. And Pennsylvania versus Mims says that you have to step out of your vehicle.
Oh, really?
Pennsylvania versus Mims, just look it up. And he has every right to snatch him out of his car right there.
I don't know about you, but I never feel more free or secure in my person than when somebody's snatching me out of my car for absolutely no reason.
Pennsylvania versus Mims. Just remember that. Remember that, everyone. Pennsylvania versus Mims. 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 Pennsylvania versus Mims.
Let's investigate this further, shall we?
Mims comes out in 77 and says, without reasonable suspicion, an officer can order somebody out of a vehicle on a traffic stop. And then 20 years later, under the Maryland v. Wilson ruling at the U.S. Supreme Court, 1997, they come out and say the same thing applies to passengers in a car.
In other words, I have the authority to make you feel insecure in your person because me and my armed buddies feel insecure in our persons. That's right. Our safety trumps your constitutional freedoms.
Mims says that we can order drivers out of a vehicle without any kind of suspicion. If the officer wants them out of the vehicle, the officer has the authority to order them out of the vehicle. And then they extended that to passengers. If I have the authority to order them out, that means I also have to have the authority to carry out that order in the face of resistance.
The Supreme Court case Pennsylvania v. Mims tells us that when Harry Mims was pulled over, it was the officer's general practice to order all drivers out of their vehicles, no matter the reason for the stop. The ruling stated, quote, "The state argues that this practice was adopted as a precautionary measure to afford a degree of protection to the officer, and that it may be justified on that ground." End quote. The court also argued, quote, "Establishing a face-to-face confrontation diminishes the possibility, otherwise substantial, that the driver can make unobserved movements. This, in turn, reduces the likelihood that the officer will be the victim of an assault." In other words, and these are my words, while vehicle occupants are being victimized by cops during a roadside shakedown, the court has ruled that they don't want the cops to be victimized in return while they're doing the victimizing. That doesn't sound like they're interested in protecting the rights of anyone. The court said that the safety of the officer is, quote, "legitimate and weighty." They claimed that, quote, "according to one study, approximately 30% of police shootings occurred when a police officer approached a suspect seated in an automobile," end quote. Now, if this is true, maybe they should stop pulling people over for unconstitutional reasons. Obviously, an ever-increasing number of individuals are getting sick and tired of being harassed and robbed at gunpoint, and some have understandably decided to take matters into their own hands and fight back. But look at this. The court states, quote, "The hazard of accidental injury from passing traffic to an officer standing on the driver's side of the vehicle may also be appreciable in some situations." Rather than conversing while standing exposed to moving traffic, The officer prudently may prefer to ask the driver of the vehicle to step out of the car and off onto the shoulder of the road, where the inquiry may be pursued with greater safety to both. So the courts and the cops admit that when they pull us over, they're knowingly putting our safety and their own at risk. They're increasing the likelihood that we will be seriously injured or even die during a traffic stop. Now, we're all under the impression that they're here to protect and serve us. How can they be protecting anyone while they're subjecting all of us to serious danger? Aren't we exposed to fast-moving traffic every second we're forced to sit along a roadway, whether we're sitting in our car or the trooper's car, leaning against his brush bumper, or standing off onto the shoulder of the road? It seems that the only logical remedy to this dangerous situation is to never put anyone in this situation to begin with. Now, the original reason Harry Mims was stopped in the first place was because of an expired tag. He didn't pay the state extortion fee, and the corporately controlled road pirates were there to collect on that debt. It wasn't until he stepped out of the car upon demand that the cops saw a bulge under his jacket and found a loaded .38 revolver. The passenger was also found to be in possession of a firearm, a .32 revolver. Ironically, in the land of the free, home of the brave, where the Second Amendment and the non-infringible right to keep and bear arms is supposedly the supreme law of the land, Mims and his friend were both charged for, quote, carrying a concealed deadly weapon and for unlawfully carrying a firearm without a license. This means that neither the cops nor the courts value or respect the Second Amendment. So, of course, it's no surprise that they would create the unconstitutional, infringement-affirming Pennsylvania v. Mims ruling. Focusing more closely on this ruling, Pennsylvania v. Mims held that, quote, the order to get out of the car, issued after the respondent was lawfully detained, was reasonable and thus permissible under the Fourth Amendment. The state's proffered justification for such order, the officer's safety, is both legitimate and weighty, and the intrusion into the respondent's personal liberty occasioned by the order, being at most a mere inconvenience, cannot prevail when balanced against legitimate concerns for the officer's safety, end quote. Do the American people really understand what the court is saying here? If the officer feels unsafe, then Americans, imagine this, immediately and magically lose their right to be secure in their effects. According to this ruling, you and I must relinquish that right so that the armed man in the costume who just interrupted our day and our right to freely travel can feel at ease around we innocent people whom he's currently harassing. That doesn't sound like freedom to me. According to the Fourth Amendment, that unalienable right, or unalienable right, meaning nobody can put a lien on your rights, that right to remain in a state of being secure, quote, shall not be violated. Yet the court says that, quote, the intrusion into the respondent's personal liberty occasioned by the order being at most a mere inconvenience cannot prevail. That's your rights cannot prevail when balanced against legitimate concerns for the officer's safety. And that is how the black-robed tyrants of the Supreme Court view your freedoms. They can be wiped away in an instant if the coward cop feels unsafe. And they view the trampling of your freedoms as a mere inconvenience.
Can you step out of the car, too? Can you please step out of the vehicle? Ma'am, can you please exit the vehicle for me? I'm asking you to step out of the vehicle for me. Can you please exit the vehicle?
Step out of the car, please, sir.
What is that?
I need you to step out of the car, sir.
I'm asking you very nicely, ma'am. I've asked you nicely. This is a lawful order. Based on both of y'all's actions, I don't feel comfortable with anything in this vehicle right now. I would like... Hold on, sir. I would like to conduct this traffic stop outside of the vehicle based on your actions because I do
No.
not feel comfortable with the way you are acting.
And
inside
that's
this vehicle.
and
I
that
do
that's not
know
my
there's any
issue.
weapons or any type of thing like
There
that
are no
inside
weapons
this
in this car.
Okay. Well, I'm asking you again. This is a lawful order to exit the vehicle. Okay. I do not feel comfortable with either one of y'all in this vehicle right now.
So this begs some obvious questions. Of the millions of traffic stops that occur every year, what percentage of those were initiated because the vehicle owner was engaged in criminal activity? And what percentage of those people actually pose a risk to officer safety? It appears that the issuance of traffic citations is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Have traffic codes and regulations been fashioned as another way the state can economically suppress large numbers of people and deprive them of their rights under the color of law? With regard to an officer's claim that he just doesn't feel safe, did the parents of a car full of children on their way to Sunday school pose the same risk as a man who just led the cops on a 50-minute high-speed chase? How about the elderly grandma? Must she exit her warm car on a cold, rainy night to quell the fears of the quivering law enforcer? If the issue in MIMS is officer safety, maybe it would be wise to immediately ask the cop who approaches your car, are you a scared cop or a brave cop? Do I terrify you, officer? Do you fear for your safety around me? If he says that he doesn't fear for his safety, then asking you to get out of the car after his admission would be beyond the scope of MIMS. Because the entire case is predicated on officer safety, right? In my opinion, Pennsylvania v. MIMS demonstrates how little the black-robed tyrants of the Supreme Court value our liberties. Traffic regulations and stops in the cop's eyes and the court's eyes trump the Constitution, which makes it all a con. If you can lose your rights simply because a trained, armed, Kevlar-vested state agent and his trigger-happy buddy are scared, then you don't have rights in the land of the free, home of the brave. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. And don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member, but more importantly, stand for your rights. If you don't exercise your rights, you'll lose them. Freedom is dangerous. The only thing more dangerous is not having freedom. I'll see you in the next video.